I'm Andrew Stuck. I'm one of the co-producers of Walk, Listen, Create, and welcome to Soundwalk Stories Sunday, I think is what we call it. But it's the Write About Walking Away showcase. So we've got a great selection of authors who've joined us today who are going to read their work. In a minute, I'm going to introduce R.M.Francis. But first, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what may happen. So basically, we're going to have some readings from both Rob and also from our two writers in residence, Cheryl and Tony. And then we're going to invite the first tranche of shortlisted authors to read. After the first tranche of authors are read, we're going to have a 5-minute comfort break. So a chance to go and grab a cup of tea. Then we come back, we have another tranche of authors. Then we're going to have judges' perspectives, where they're just going to talk about the judging process and why they chose the authors they did. And then Rob is going to announce the winners and runners-up. But first off, the good news is I'm really delighted to welcome Rob. Rob is a writer from the Black Country. He completed his PhD at the University of Wolverhampton, where he is a lecturer in creative and professional writing. He's the author of 5 poetry chapbook collections, Transitions, published by the Blacklight Engine Room in 2015, Orpheus, published by Lapwing Publications in 2016, Corvus's Burnt Wing, Love Balm and Cure All, that are also from Blacklight, Lamella from Original Plus chapbooks, and Field Notes from Deep Topography of Dudley, Wild Press Books in 2019. In 2020, Smokestack Books published a first full-length collection called Subsidence, and his debut novel, Bella, is out with Wild Press Books. In spring 2019, he became the inaugural David Bradshaw Writer in Residence at Oxford University. And in 2022, he was the Poet in Residence for the Black Country Geological Society. His second novel, The Wrenner, is published with Wild Press Books in 2021. And in March this year, his collection of poems, essays, and field notes, The Chain Choral Chorus, is due out with Play Dead Press. He is a reviews editor for the Journal of Class and Culture. And this year, his collection of horror stories, Amelie's Currents of Unmindfulness, is due out with Poe Girl Publishing. So you're a busy man, Rob. Welcome. And thank you for comparing our showcase.
Well, thank you very much, Andrew, and it's a real delight to be here with everyone. It's a real pleasure to share some work with you and to listen to the incredible writers that have gathered here today, especially around one of my favourite subjects, one of my passions, which is sort of place writing and ideas of reconfiguring our awareness of places through creative activity such as walking. As Andrew said, I was the poet in residence for the Black Country Geological Society for a couple of years and produced this book, which is blurring out, but it's The Chain Choral Chorus, my latest collection, which are a series of poems and field notes and essays kind of about that experience. And so much of it was about walking into place and refinding what I didn't know was right on my doorstep, and the wonder that's quite often just on the edge of our everydays. So I'm just going to very quickly share one of the poems from that collection, and this is called Fens. Where I live, which is close to Dudley, close to Wolverhampton in the Black Country, there's a nature reserve that's right in the middle of a couple of old council estates and old industrial estates, and the Black Country is very much like that. You kind of stumble across these green spaces in between the grey, and that's what I'm sort of playing with here. It's called Fens. Between whitewashed estate, where terraced streets named Milton, Byron, Tennyson, and the green sludged end of the cut, sits half-dried menace, Fens Pool, shoveler, Signet, Gadwall, blether about with the gypsy youths toying off some trap, brothers scrambling quarry ridges, the statuesque drip of lonesome fishermen, a cut through, a twitcher's hide, a lineman for fights and shifts. Megaliths penetrate Loam's maidenhead. Fireclay peaks from seat earth at ruined colliery pillars, and reservoir banks, and father-daughter are sniper still, as broad-bodied chaser peels from pupae in adder tongues. Thank you very much. Yeah, it gives me great delight, and I'm going to keep saying that because I'm really thrilled to be here with everyone this evening. But my first job is to introduce the first writer in residence, and this is Cheryl McCoskey, who was born in Canada and splits her time between Wiltshire, London, and the Caribbean. Mainly writes flash fiction and short stories, and her work can be found in Ellipsis Zine, New Flash Fiction Review, The Cabinet of Heed, Urban Tree Festival, Janus Literary, National Flash Fiction Day, and Flash Fiction Festival anthologies. Cheryl's enjoyed the stint as flash fiction writer in residence for Walk, Listen, Create, and she's going to wow us with some of her words right now. Go wild, everyone, for Cheryl.
Thank you, Rob. Thanks for such a good introduction. Right, the story I'm going to read is called Grandma's Shrunken Head Decorates My Backyard Tiki Bar, and it was published in New Flash Fiction Review. Grandma was whole once, not a shriveled brown skull on a stand, doubling up as a paper towel holder. The First World War broke out, and her father was out of work. Grandma's family was so poor, she was sent to farmers to beg for rotting vegetables to feed the chickens. Instead, the family ate the putrid potatoes and parsnips themselves. From the shame, an incision was made at the back of the ear to remove her skull from her neck. In the early 20s, during Prohibition, Grandma sold beer out of a pail to passers-by. She peddled ice cream, using ice from an old mine tunnel in exchange for groceries to keep her siblings alive. That's when red seeds were placed under her nostril. Grandma married and got work at McLaren sawmills, 10 hours a day for $4.50. 5-mile walk home at the end of the day to get the supper on. Her husband held her mouth together with 3 palm pins. Grandma helped on a farm this side of Cowley. Payment was a milk cow, the start of her small dairy herd. Whatever spared milk or cream was sold. The larder was full and Grandma's desiccated mouth tried to smile. Then the cows got Jonas disease. Fat from Grandma's flesh was extracted and boiled in water, saturated with herbs. 4 children were born over 4 years: Fanny, William, Effie, and Arthur. The mine closed down and Grandpa was laid off. When drink-sodden Grandpa was minding the children, they played on the railway track. Grandma's favorite, Arthur, was hit by a train. He died instantly. Grandma's head was dried with hot rocks and sand, molded to retain human features. Grandpa ran off with a neighbor. Fanny and Effie cleaned the houses of wealthy city folk along the Bow Valley. William became a manager for the Department of Highways. He didn't drive to see Grandma as much as he should. Decorative beads were added to Grandma's shrunken head as a finishing touch. Shrunken Grandma sits next to the rum collection, toucan bottle opener, cactus neon artwork, and clip-on tropical birds. They believe she's content with her Hawaiian grass table skirt, shadows cast by the pineapple mood light. They believe her avenging soul won't seep out, but she's headhunting her perpetrators. Thank you.
Fantastic. It's just such an incredible piece of fiction. And, you know, we get layers and layers and layers of detail and these meandering, intertwining little bits of narrative that are all kind of taking us off in different directions. It's so rich. And I envy writers that can manage to pull that off. It's beautiful. Lovely to hear you read it as well.
Thank you.
It now gives me great pleasure as well to introduce the second writer in residence, Tony Horrocks, who has lived in East Dorset in the UK for many years after growing up near London. He's worked extensively in community theatre, educational drama and theatre in education, recently as a freelance director of State of Play Arts. In poetry, he's a long-standing member of the Blandford-based Poetry in Progress, or PIP, PIP, a group of 7 Dorset poets convened by Paul Hyland, who meet regularly to share and critique new work. PIP published an anthology of work called Seven, published by Impulse Press in 2014, apart from a collection of poems called Voyages, published by Word and Action in Dorset many moons ago. Tony's poetry has appeared in South and Orbis journals. His poem Of Blood and Water was the winner of last year's Walk, Listen, Create Poetry Prize, anthologized in Walking Home. Ladies and gentlemen, Tony Horrocks.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that introduction. Okay, so Andrew's asked me to read 2 poems. I'm going to read the one that I put in last year's anthology, and it kind of the next one I'm going to read is like a sequel to it, and that's just been published in the Orbis journal. So this was the one from Walking Home, and it was called Of Blood and Water. A lot of my work has been exploring my dual heritage between England and Czechoslovakia, or the Czech Republic as it's now called. So this one for Walking Home was Of Blood and Water. For 70 years, 5 English places he had called home, but within his hybrid blood flowed secret rivers, Vltava, Elba, Oder, Morava, names he could barely pronounce, but ingested in childhood. Those Sundays his father and uncle met, and goose-fat dumplings with sweet vinegared cabbage evoked their birth language, and he, an uncomprehending ghost, sensed their sadness, wondering if they wanted to return home to Prague in search of their mother lost in the Holocaust. They never did. Years later, he stepped off the train there, walking to find the city's new Jewish cemetery and the fallen family gravestone hidden beneath sprawling ivy. He fetched water, let it flow like a river, washing clean a century's legacy of dirt. As he whispered, Vltava, Elba, Oder, Morava, until his name at last appeared. Thank you very much. And this is a follow-up to that one. I'm actually trying to write a play about it. It's taking a long time, but who knows? The idea is to integrate some of the poems with drama. So this one has just been published in Orbis, great journal for poetry and fiction, short stories. If you don't know it, please check it out. And so this one is called Walking with Granny M, transported to Latvia, January 1942. At times, I dream I'm there with you. We're here singing. A song thrush, I ask. You take my hand, saying you can't be sure of anything anymore. The guards yell, "Geschnell," as we shuffle into a dark forest. But you wonder if we're back in Prague, in the canopied cemetery where they buried your husband. I tell you, a tree has sprouted between your long gone parents' graves. You say, ah no, yes. Your sons offered to pull it out before they left. You refused. The dead sleep well among trees. You would like to sleep, but a tune is in your head, a tune heard in Terezin, a piece your cellist son once played. You will write to ask him, safe in London. A mist descends, ghosting the Latvian woods. I can't see you anymore, but I still hear shovels, gunfire, someone singing a lullaby. Is it you? Thank you.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Now, sometimes I think we can get a sense, and I certainly feel this when I hear Tony there reading those beautiful poems, that when we walk, it's an act of thinking, and sometimes thinking feels like an act of walking, and the tracing the kind of personal memories and the sense of personal identity alongside historical or communal identity, sort of along those currents, sort of brings that about in really interesting ways. So it's so lovely to hear that. So my next job is to start introducing some of the shortlisted writers. Now that we've heard from the two writers in residence, and each writer will get a chance to share their work or have their work read on their behalf. So I'll jump straight in with the first on my list. After a fulfilled lifetime of NHS doctoring, necessarily indoors, Richard Westcott now loves nothing more than being outside in a natural environment, preferably moving. Reading his story, The Return of the Green Man, let me introduce you to Richard Westcott.
Thank you very much, Rob, for that lovely introduction. The Return of the Green Man. His wound-up crozier straightens out, tightened springs unwind, releasing frondy fingers first, tipped with soft new nails, followed by stalk of hand and wrist, then unstretched arcs of bramble arms thrown out to grasp and root. Keratin hardens, new limbs grow, stronger from the making. He emerges, phloem-fed, hydrated by xylem, strong-armed in lignin. Rib-circled, he inspires, his inflating body ready to break its bonds, swollen with fresh projections. Leaves sprout from every crack, jostling. They are drawn forth, these unsuspected members, to find themselves full of purpose and unruly. Renewed man is almost ready to take his leave once more, once he has learned to walk and take stock. Firmly rooted, multi-limbed, he advances when you're not looking. Implanting his staff afresh, he leaves the last one, leading the way to his rightful place through irrepressible growth. Thank you.
Tremendous, tremendous. I love that work. And I think, again, this is something we could probably all share as fans of literature and fans of movement and fans of the great outdoors, that sometimes when we find ourselves in that natural realm, we're never really sure whether something is absolutely astonishingly beautiful or absolutely astonishingly terrifying. And I think that captures that sublime beautifully. So yeah, great stuff. Next on my list is the writer Kevin Cheeseman, who is a retired biochemist living in Buckinghamshire. His flash fiction and short stories have won and been placed in a range of competitions, and he's going to be sharing the work tonight Chiltern Walks number 13, Aston Rowan Reserve.
Thanks very much, Rob. Chiltern Walks number 13, Aston Rowan Reserve. Maggie is in the shower, so I shout through the door. I'm off now. Aston Rowan, for the book. Oh, okay, take care. Nothing more. At the car park, I dictate the first of my notes. Waypoint 1, this is a circular walk starting and finishing at Cowleys Wood. Grid reference, whatever. I brought Maggie here shortly after we met. Bare legs, I remember, under a yellow dress. Beautiful. I start walking. This first part is signposted. It's level and undemanding. The path through the trees emerges in a wildflower meadow. I cross and slip through the kissing gate, chastely today. Waypoint 2, left up the track. From 3, a moderate climb loops back to the ridge. It's harder going than I'd expected. At the top, I catch my breath. 4, the reserve is home to junipers and orchids. The car park's nearby if you're tempted to bail out early. Below me runs the motorway cutting. I called it a wound, but Maggie disagreed. It's like a river, that graceful curve, the ceaseless flow. Now I think, what if we abandoned it? Would the wound heal? I trudge down the chalky slope, kites mewing overhead. Descend the hill to waypoint 5, follow the path around Bald Hill. She'll have left by now. She'll have loaded the car and dropped her key through the letterbox onto the cold tiled floor. 6. An uneven path leads up to the road. Cross with care. You are now back where you started.
Absolutely brilliant. I love that piece of literature. It's a really, really lovely piece of fiction, and you know, the tiny bits of kind of sardonic humor. There's a little feel of the Alan Bennett humor about it as well, and then you get these little glimpses of absolute beauty and real kind of bleak quality to it as well. There's a sort of melancholia to it that I really like. So yeah, thank you, Kevin. That's great. Next up, reading the piece Turtle Houses, we have Rosaleen Lynch, who's an Irish community worker and writer in London's East End with 52 stories, forthcoming from Ad Hoc Fiction. Go wild, everyone, for Rosaleen Lynch.
Thanks so much. Okay. Turtle Houses. Turtle houses the words in the speech bubble of the faded mural of Donatello. Underneath reads, portable, single occupancy, solar powered, pod abodes for nomads. They mean for the homeless. Instead of building houses, tin mini winnies. Bet they've never tried living in one, not with a kid. Connector pods don't work. Hatchlings don't bear up to attempted theft. That's why my 3-year-old ended up in mine, saving for a lifer to grow into. Now she's 10. We're back in separate shells. Video comms is no substitute for a hug. But air's too scarce to share. At 3, she'd no clue what CO2 does to a developing brain, how air filters struggle with 2. That we weren't so much falling asleep as unconscious. She liked feeling fizzy. I'd open her capsule when she slept. They're not called coffin ships for nothing. Now she's 10, settled into her own shell. She can handle canal locks, docks at communal shower blocks, migrant co-ops, kitchen co-ops, and ships at waterway factories, hydro plants and mills for food and fuel. Tonight's her first solar flood, and I'll check her tether. One day she'll surf flood to the sea, or join a floating village, or settle in some Nepalese city peak. Until then, each sunset, we'll leave with the low tide queue, trudge mud-tracked roads with 24-hour drone radio, pull our turtle houses behind like a toy wagon train. And when Donatello sings, we'll join in and sing along with the song of the turtle dome that turns a house into a home, pretending to believe until the dream bubble becomes real. Thank you.
That's wonderful, really wonderful. I think it's the dynamics and the music in that piece that really grabbed me. The sense of sound and movement in those sentences and those lines are just so that you want to reach out and stick, bite into it. It's so musical, and that short sharp followed by the really soft, and then something that really gives you a sucker punch. The line after line is really impressive. I love that. Our next writer isn't present today, but we're going to have what isn't reading at least, but we're going to have it read to be part of the celebration. So let me introduce the writer anyway. This is Shani Cadwallander, who is a teacher, poet, and currently a Chase-funded PhD researcher at Birkbeck, originally from the northeast of England and now based in London, with her piece Stump Speech. And I would like to ask Tony if he would read this piece for us.
Stump Speech. I read that Wordsworth wrote pentameter to match his tread, the iambs of his feet. The lofty climbs, he climbed them, and the trees escaped the chop because he thought it meet. It is it, symmetric thought, the world designed to fit your walk? To see yourself gaze back from grandeur, free-handed, landed, not laden, no thoughts of what's below, of silverfish in shower tray, of pigeon eggs smashed pearlescent, under trash of licey rats in drains, world under water, no cutbacks to cull your sky sway, you're all right, as long as someone grandless hefts the bags uphill down the legwork of your leisure. There's some of us wouldn't know such heights. It's not all swooning over Mont Blanc. There's some of us sweaty, out of step, words not worth shit. Grafting like the plains because it's in us. Pressing on like downy rounds of leaf buds to be here, unremarked, except by passers with a tender, tending, tentative eye, stumping up, low, sublime.
Yeah, I mean, that just captures that sense of kind of walking out of the known and walking into the self. If we take a kind of John Clare approach to it, that's caught really nicely in that poem. I think that it's not all this grand sort of transcendent moments. Sometimes it's the tiny little things that really capture us. Our next writer on the bill this evening is a writer of poetry and prose that's often influenced by his East London surroundings. And the writer is Christopher Cunningham, who finds himself walking a powerful way of shaping and structuring what he sees. And this piece of work is going to be shared by Cheryl, and it goes by the name of East of Woolwich.
I'm sorry Chris can't be with us, and I'll do my best to make his words sing. East of Woolwich, continuing like London's flow, west to east and down to the sea, your route is well marked. It's scuffed with Coast Guard emergency notices. Each step leads you away from where that helps mustered, where palaces dip toes into Greenwich's more genteel upstream waters. Your path hugs the river, caught between an archaeologist's ancient silted dream and the planner's square-framed spectacles. Half buildings grow up beside patches of bramble, derelict storehouses, and holding old secrets the tightest, swirling rip currents. At Bazalgette's monumental pump house, the trail narrows. Hoarding hides the riverside view, and iron railings bar access. They've reduced its statement of domineering Victorian virtues, a temple, an institute of learning, and a beacon to cure the metropolis of sewage, to an apology. Its measure follows. Guarded by taller, stronger fences is the vast replacement privately owned works. The next huge complex is devoted to the disposal of other urban waste. The city's topography and its prejudices have combined profitably to send its flotsam and jetsam sliding away here, out of the general sight. With the path twisting around angled quays containing their skeletons, rusting gantries appear, forlorn testament to the frantic comings and goings of the overseas trade they once controlled. They'd been left to rot, and only afterwards had their dangerous structure warnings nailed on. Erith completes this stage. A broken down train just beyond the station on the upline gathers heaviness, like some beached whale. It blocks all London-bound services. At least you have a kind of map to find your way, back or on.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cheryl. That was beautifully read, and another really dynamic and really interesting piece that sort of makes the mundane and the almost the stuff that we pass by every day without wonder or without curiosity is suddenly full of curiosity and layers in that piece, and really delving down into the layers of a track or a route through a place as well. Beautifully handled. So we're coming to the close of the first half, and before we do, we have one more reader, and our final reader before the break is Lorraine Collins. Lorraine Collins and her husband enjoy traveling in their VW camper van, people and places offering rich sources for her stories. And this piece is called Clear Line of Sight. Lorraine, take it over.
I stare at my newly tattooed knuckles. Walk on the right hand, tall on the left. Then I close my eyes and flex my fingers, visualizing those words wrapped around Dad's throat. He'd always told me to stand up for myself. Not parental encouragement, just a yell spat in my face as he grabbed my t-shirt, his stinky alcohol breath sucking the oxygen from my air. I used to wish I could disappear, like Mum did years ago. She just walked away, didn't look back. Why can't you be a man and stand up for yourself? Then he turned from me in disgust. On my 16th birthday, I took his advice. It was the only gift Dad gave me. I joined the army. Be the best. I've got the medals to prove it. So, now here I am, back in my childhood battleground. I'll lay in wait, then ambush him. It's what happened to me. We'd left the silent, empty desert, leaving ephemeral footprints in the shifting sands. Destination, Helmand River. Crowded with buildings, trees, cornfields, vision blurred by pollen dust and sweat. Then snipers, jelly legs, skin tingle, adrenaline rush, machine gun fire. Get down! Spinal cord severed. Now I clench my fists. He's there in front of me, and I see he is nothing. Well, Dad, I stood up for myself, like you said. I unclench my fists, turn, and maneuver my wheelchair down the path. I leave before he can walk away.
Wow. What's there to say about that one? It's very, very powerful. And I think so much of the power is in the simplicity of it. And it's something, and I don't mean that in any kind of negative way at all, because I think that's something that's very, very difficult to pull off. But it's a real punch in the throat, that piece of work. Beautifully handled, and little glimpses of real beautiful imagery as well. Obliquely beautiful, let's say. Okay, so that draws the first half to a close. I think Andrew said we're going to have a 5-minute comfort break, and then we'll be back with more writing and words from our guests this evening. Thank you very much, and welcome back, everybody. We'll get straight into it. I'm going to kick off proceedings again and share another quick poem from the Chain Coral Chorus. I think it would be remiss to do an event about landscape and walking and movement, certainly from a personal note, without mentioning a writer that recently passed, the Scottish-French writer Kenneth White, who has been a huge influence on my work. And I was lucky enough to have a few conversations with him over the last couple of years before he passed, a couple of weeks, months ago. He had loads of really, really interesting things to say about movement through landscape and what it does to our sense of self, and how it can revitalize bits of ourselves that we'd forgotten about. Incredibly prolific writer and really, really profound thinker. And this next poem of mine uses a quote from him to start the piece. It was at a conference that he did in Portugal some years ago, where he quipped, "People know their address, they don't know where they are." And this poem is called Error. West Park wanderer, erratic and stiff, X-forms in shades cast over pathways, Eros pole, glacial guided from Erenig, an arrow rebinding space. Fred and Ken Perma-Trias tracks check the state of chestnuts and their own scape. It's too icy still, ain't me, man? They may ripe. Shrug. And on to Bowling Green and their own agil, but never without a slight palm pat against wet felsite, cosmos pointing and terra firmed, informing in firm attention, a honing farewell. Thank you very much. And without further ado, I will introduce our first writer for this second half. Reading the piece, I could. It is Amelia Hodgson, a writer and editor based in Gloucestershire who likes exploring the why of a place, preferably on foot. Amelia, take it away.
Thanks, Rob. I could, I could. See you later. See you at pickup. Have a good day, yeah? The children are through the gate. The small talk is over. Time to head off. I could go straight home, make the day's second coffee, sit down at my desk and stay there for 6 hours, skipping lunch. Volley emails back and forth until the alarm goes for pickup, and I wonder why my back hurts and my soul aches. Or I could cross the road, take a right down that little lane where the beech trees meet above, speed up into a run, fling my phone into the hedge and leave it all behind. I could fling my clothes off too, stride naked and gigantic across the escarpment, the model for the future famous escaping woman of the Cotswolds. Carved into the limestone beneath the turf, she is known for her bonny calves and her wild eyes, 2 campfires kept burning by devotees. I could leap over the quarries, shouting joyous sounds that echo tenfold from the rocks, startling the dog walkers. Their hounds would run after me, yelping, forming a bushy tail of fur and noise as I flick drones out of the sky and guide gliders gently into rainbows. I could cross the Severn with a single step, jog round Wales before lunchtime, cut the top off the old sugar loaf for my tea and drink it leaning against the mountains, staring back at my old life and laughing. I could do all this. I could.
Beautiful, beautiful piece. I really love that poem. It's a remarkable piece, and it's the humour in it works so well, and it keeps you on your toes, and you don't expect the sort of hard hit that the poem has at the same time that works so beautifully. And I think it kind of calls out to us as kind of reading, writing walkers that we might be, of that sort of bubbling elemental that's within us all, or at least we hope it's in us all. So it's a tremendous piece of work. I love it. Our second writer on the bill for the second half is a writer called Ricky Abbott, who studied literature and the psychology of language for many years, and so is refreshingly late to the practice of creative writing. Ricky's going to read Nomad Possessions. Take it away.
Nomad Possessions. The first gardens must have been long, broadcast from discarded seeds along circle tracks. So maybe Ha-Ha is the oldest garden name. When you doubled back and saw the corn had followed you at a discreet distance, aha, you said. If you walk the long garden, you haul everything you own, you carry on your shoulders what doesn't grow shoulders, so better to herd than hoard. Better to store with quick sentence, to vault with oral verve, and keep head counts in campfire stories, rather than enroll in scroll and scroll of earthly troves your battered treasured things. The trust of cattle that follow or maybe lead, not knowing boundaries, only following beaten tracks, choreographed as water thrives. The pattern of a carpet that exists foremost in potential a child could carry, your computers in the stars making you look up, not down, at properties too large to license. Languages long lost and gained, different songs with different steps, along highways without signs. Where towers are casting shadows in the circling sun as rings of repugnance round fearful hordes, you're strangers outside the walls. But you can always carry strangers, Rohingya mother, Grandma Cantonese, whom you may never know and grow where you were never planted. We can forage strangers broadcast in ourselves. We anger our old gods after all, who abide in the stories of corn when we're not kind to strangers. The last gardens on earth will be long.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that last line. The last gardens on earth will be long. It's a really lovely way to finish the poem. It says so much, and there's that sense that we're peaking down and up and going into a place, but expanding ourselves simultaneously. I really get a sense in that work that there's of that feeling. Certainly, what I get when I'm kind of peregrinating around, that you kind of pick up bits that you take into yourself, and you leave things behind. There's that happening there as well. I think really lovely. Thank you, Ricky. Okay. We've got a returning writer next. She's had a go already. She's going to have another go. Rosaline Lynch, who I've already introduced, but I'm going to give her another introduction because that's the way we do things. An Irish community worker and writer in London's East End with 52 stories forthcoming from Ad Hoc Fiction, and this time reading In the Time It Takes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction again. It's actually gone dark since I read last. Okay. In the time it takes. In the time it takes for the fair to roll into town, and the stars to drop to the ground to leaflet the crowds, and for you to steal the money to go with Callie T, and for her to leave again with the fair, patterns of disembodied lion heads like sunflowers on canvas, and a man's head reaching from the trailer back, his arm stretching to grab hers, and her feet lifting into the air, hitching her wagon to anyone's leaving this town, promising she'll write, though you know she can't read. In that time, you realize. In the time it takes for the sunflower you plant in your Leaving Cert biology class, a school garden time capsule, to sprout and grow 3 inches, to follow the sun, the seed case hanging on to the leaf, unfrozen in the uncurl. In that time, you realize. In the time it takes your father to come in from the fields, to find his rainy day fund in the hollowed out otter gone, and the fares been and gone, from the flattening of grass and muddy tracks, and you're gone, last night's plate of food, Irish stew cold, still there, like the sunflower tiles your mother said she planted in the kitchen because she had no time to watch them grow. In that time, while you're on a barn roof, to be closer to the stars, you realize in the time it takes, that time takes, and for you it will take time, because you won't walk away too.
Beautiful, really, really beautiful. And I think something perhaps that's forgotten quite often when we're dealing about being and landscape and movement across places and spaces, that time does play funny things with us and stretches out and shrinks in really curious ways. And it approaching landscape in creative ways like we're doing this evening pulls you into that kind of direct, quite acute observation of time itself that you wouldn't have without body and landscape. You know, the things have to play against each other, I think. And so it's a really, really lovely poem. Now, I know that most people will be sick of hearing my voice so far, but you've got to hear me a little bit more and going to hear me a little bit longer before we take a break for somebody else, because I'm going to be reading the next person's work. So let me introduce the author first of all, though. I'm going to be reading Anna in the Ashes by Jan Martin, who is an illustrator and writer. In 2021, after a career in visual art, Jan began publishing collections of illustrated poetry inspired by her Somerset home. And this is Anna in the Ashes. Anna's in the ashes, mad as leaves, harvests her tears and watches him grind them for his bread. You're mad, he said. And true enough, the look in her eyes is wild and hunted. Her baby cries, her hair's a mess, her arse is fat. She smokes too much and shakes and sighs. It's too much, he says, to live with that. Poor old farmer, to live with that. Leaves crack against the window, and he rattles out the charges. You left the fire unlit and didn't clear the ashes. So with ash in her hair, she forgives his trespasses, but wanders on his dreams like a hungry fox, leaving many snowy footprints. The empty fields trail away to nothing, and more snow on the way will cover any trace where she's running to keep up with the songs of her babies and the knock of her heart and the knowledgeable wind that rips her face. The snow turns to sleet and the mark of her feet come round in a circle to the same old place where he waits with his shotgun. So is it better to be mad or dead, or to walk with her babies out into the night? You'll die, he said, of cold and raving snowstorms, but her eyes and the night are hard and bright. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think that's a remarkable piece of work. It's beautiful and haunting. It's got a kind of folkloric quality to it, but it's still kind of domestic and everyday feel to it as well. Channeling a lot of different voices, and there's a subtlety of touch with the imagery and the poetic devices that are used there as well. I really enjoyed reading it, actually. I hope other people enjoyed me reading it, but I enjoyed it. So thank you, Jan. you'll be pleased to know I'm going to shut up in a second after I've introduced our next writer, Eileen de Power, who lives in Dublin, Ireland, is the author of a pamphlet, In the Jitterfritz of Neon, a collaboration with Damien B. Donnelly. Is published by Hedgehog Poetry. And Eileen is going to read Serenade.
Thanks very much, Rob. Serenade by Eileen de Power. Someone has replaced the vape and takeaway debris that loitered here when I last walked this way, with a trail of jasmine flowers, skyfall lucide on sun-bleached asphalt. At the canal, lovers on the towpath weave through willow fronds, sure as a cleat hitch. A woman with proper running shoes shares a metre with her lurcher. Their loose ankle skip wisps above the path like hovercraft. That one couple waiting at the school gate, a generation older than the rest. The way he tucks her hair, bends to kiss like she has nectar only he can siphon. And a girl, 6 or 7, calls out over some back garden wall, "Hello, hello, you hear me?" To all of us or none. Thank you.
I love that. It's a wonderful poem. It's like tiny little snapshots collaged together of a landscape. Really nice. And I don't think I've ever heard and read as beautiful an image of a runner and their dog outside of that poem. It's just so nicely put together, those couple of lines. Really, really beautiful. Okay, we are coming to the close of our readers for a moment in very soon. I've got one more on my list, so I'm hoping Andrew will give me a nudge if I've missed anybody, or somebody else will shout at me. Please do. But we've got one more, and then we're going to be introducing the judges and be making some very important announcements. So our final reader for this second half is Isabella Mead, who is head of learning at the Story Museum in Oxford. Her debut pamphlet, Dear Rwanda, was published by Live Canon in 2023. And she'll be reading Carn Ingley, Mountain of Angels.
Thank you. Carn Ingley, Mountain of Angels. The sheep tracks were secrets until we were upon them, rambling twists of heather and gorse, punctuated with rocks from a scattered fort. Don't bear left too soon or you'll hit the steep bit. Summit the lower part and walk along, said Grandad every year, but we'd still get caught and end up in jagged loops round the top, scrambling back and forth. The sheep would stare. At the top of the outcrop we'd survey the horizon down to the yellow and blue of the bay. No angels would land, but sometimes sent mists with exquisite sunlight filtering through. We would have a picnic and sketch the rocks, the leaning grasses framing the sea, the hut circles and wild horses, the meandering course of the bay to the estuary, where Grandad would unlock his binocular case, focus the lens and look for herons. Carn Ingley was a dream of green and purple clustering over ancient ruins, and always another unravelling path to discover. One year Mum told us this was where my sister was conceived, and we both looked at her in horror. We didn't fancy picnics there after that, or in the years that followed mention the flow of the estuary where Grandad's ashes were thrown. We'd be silent, staring into middle distance, while a lamb might skitter up the scree towards us, or an old ram descend to the bay, straightening out the secrets of the sheep tracks, sweeping the pathways clear.
Awesome. And that's exactly the right word for it as well, isn't it? Because it's almost overwhelming, the amount of intense beauty and intense sort of landscape that's in that, with the angelic mists and the coastlines and the rocks and the grasses, but then you get that tempered, and this is what's so clever about this work, is it tempered with that colloquial, that everyday granddad's voice and mom's voice. It's really works nicely, brilliant. Well, I have had a blast listening to all of those pieces of work, and I think this has been a really tremendous showcase of really interesting takes on this year's theme, walking away, walking into places, walking away from ourselves, walking to refind and reconfigure. All of that's coming through in these works, and it's been done with such beauty and such attention to the musicality of the landscapes and the musicality of the words, and sometimes with a real punch in the face with some of these pieces as well. So I think it's been a remarkable session tonight. But before I start wittering, you'll have to shut me up because I'm quite a witterer. It gives me great pleasure now to start introducing the judges to share some of their thoughts as well. And first of all, I would like to welcome Ralph Hoyt, who is the poetry judge. Ralph has been a located audio designer for 20 years. He creates interactive sound worlds in the areas of dramatized historical scenarios, contemporary poetry, and poetry music fusions accessed through the smartphone, either as part of SatSynth, Ralph Hoyt, writer, poet, Mark Yeats, classical contemporary composer, Phil Phelps, coder, audio engineer, and musician, or as a solo artist using our own proprietary platform, SatSynth QR. Apologies for pronunciations, but please put your hands together for Ralph Hoyt.
Thank you, Rob. Yes, SatSynth, yes. Yeah, I was one of the poetry judges, of course. The other one was Tony. So the two poetry judges. I just thought, just listening to that, I couldn't tell the difference between the poems and what was supposed to be flash fiction. So, that's actually really nice. That there seems to be no difference with them. Otherwise, though, I'm just completely traumatized because, I looked at the short list. We came up with a long list, we came up with a short list, and every single poem on that short list was definitely worthy of winning. So it was a really traumatic, actually, to have to choose just one poem to be the winner. So, I mean, what I really want to say to everyone who was shortlisted is that your work is absolutely excellent, and hearing you and also hearing people perform their work tonight, I can hear the strength in the voices. I call myself a live art poet, so the poetry for me is in the voice. So listening to people voicing them was added to it. Yes, so I just really hope that not winning something when there is only one winner will not put people off, because all the shortlists are absolutely incredible and worthy of winning. So take them to different places. I don't think you need to change a word. Don't even change an apostrophe. Just take them round. Yeah, expose them to the world, and you'll be successful. That's about it, really. I think the final choice, I don't know. I'm not announcing it, but the final. I think what I was looking at the judge was. Another thing was that. What was really nice was that Tony and I agreed. We haven't met before. Tony and I both agreed on a long list and both agreed on a short list. So it's very nice to have sort of corroboration that we have the same there are two poets who have the same feeling about what poetry is. Just don't ask me to define it, please. Okay. I think the poem we chose, the poem I was certainly very keen on in the end, was just, I just liked that it was very, very to theme. It really, every word was weighed, perhaps, but that sounds too conscious. It was unself-consciously weighed appropriately. It was weighed and weighted. And every time I heard that one word, and immediately reverberated in all sorts of 3D directions in the universe, I was wondering, okay, where's she going with this? Oh, I said she, did I? Whoops. Where's she going with this? What's happening here? So I don't know. I'm just getting a bit carried away here. Sorry. Yeah, that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ralph. That's lovely to hear. Nice to hear that judges have brought their minds together as well. I've judged a few things in the past where I haven't been quite as lucky with my fellow judging panel. We're going to hear now again from Cheryl Markowski, who is our flash fiction judge, just to share some of her thoughts on her judging perspective. Cheryl.
Thanks very much. First of all, I just want to send apologies from Suzanne Green, who is my fellow judge, and I couldn't have done it without her. She was terrific. She made the whole process very streamlined. She was very organized. She had like tables and charts and all sorts. And she also made it fun. And we did enjoy reading all the entries. It was, again, as Ralph was saying, it's really hard to narrow it down when you have to, come up with a winner and runner-up in the end, but it's very difficult. And I think all these stories deserve a good round of applause. I thought they were fantastic. And we were interested too how we got 6 very different sort of inventive interpretations of the theme. Anything from walking away from a broken marriage to walking away from the past and bumping into something new along the Thames, walking away from a bullying family, father, apologies, walking away from reality towards a boldly newly imagined life, and the realization that you'll never walk away from your current situation. So they're all very different, and that was really refreshing. And Suzanne and I really enjoyed reading all of your lovely words, and I want to thank you for trusting us with them. And congratulations to all of you for ending up in this lovely little book. And thank you again.
Yeah, I think we should give everybody a round of applause. Well said, Cheryl. That was beautifully put. And yeah, it's the work on show this evening and in the publication it's really, really impressive, and you should be very pleased with yourselves. Yeah, well, I think I will. I'll do runners up and then winners, and in your own living rooms or libraries or wherever you might be, you can give me a little drum roll as we're moving along. Okay, so I'll start with the poetry runners up. So the runners up for poetry selection for this year is Anna in the Ashes by Jan Martin and Serenade by Eileen Dupois. The prose, oh yeah, round of applause. Wonderful work, and we've heard them all this evening, so we know for a fact that they're wonderful work. The runners-up for the prose selection is East of Woolwich, by Chris Cunningham, and yes, that's the only runner-up in that category. I almost went a bit too far then and opened the envelope too soon. Okay, so we're on to winners. So it's nail bite, drum roll time. The winner of the poetry is Stump Speech by Shani Cadwallander. And the prose winner is I Could, I Could by Amelia Hodgson. Congratulations, Amelia. Congratulations, Shani. They're both remarkable pieces of work, and do we have time, Andrew, to hear one or two of those again? Or
I think we should. Amelia's in the room. Shani is not with us, so maybe we can invite Amelia to read her piece again, and maybe
an on the spot acceptance speech.
Wow, I'm totally overwhelmed. Thank you so much for choosing me out of all of those wonderful pieces. I'm just, this means a lot to me. So thank you very much. So you'd like me to read it again?
Well, I think we would, yeah.
Okay, right. exhale. Right, I could, you know, and it does sound like I can. I could, you know, I could. See you later. See you at pickup. Have a good day, yeah? The children are through the gate. The small talk is over. Time to head off. I could go straight home, make the day's second coffee, sit down at my desk and stay there for 6 hours, skipping lunch, volley emails back and forth until the alarm goes for pickup and I wonder why my back hurts and my soul aches. Or I could cross the roads, take a right down that little lane where the beech trees meet above, speed up into a run, fling my phone into the hedge and leave it all behind. I could fling my clothes off too, stride naked and gigantic across the escarpment, the model for the future famous escaping woman of the Cotswolds. Carved into the limestone beneath the turf, she is known for her bonny calves and her wild eyes, 2 campfires kept burning by devotees. I could leap over the quarries, shouting joyous sounds that echo tenfold from the rocks, startling the dog walkers. Their hounds would run after me, yelping, forming a bushy tail of fur and noise as I flick drones out of the sky and guide gliders gently into rainbows. I could cross the Severn with a single step, jog round Wales before lunchtime, cut the top off the old sugarloaf for my tea and drink it leaning against the mountains, staring back at my old life and laughing. I could do all this. I could. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, well, everybody, thank you so much, and a really big round of applause to everybody. And you know, there's sort of a list of acknowledgements. I probably missed someone out, but obviously a big thank you to Rob for comparing the event. Also to Cheryl, Tony, and our writers in residence who are handing over the mantle to Amelia and Shani. To Ralph, who has dropped in to give us some judges' perspective on the poetry as well. Congratulations, everyone. And just to say, how it will go from here is that the winners and runners-up will get an email from me tomorrow morning. But in the meantime, go away and enjoy the evening. And a really big thank you to you all. And I'm not sure whether there's anyone left in here who hasn't got a copy of the book, but if you haven't, then you can buy it online. And we do hope you'll purchase a copy and maybe more and send them to friends. But thanks once again for taking part in the competition.